Hello and welcome to this Mirror Facebook Live about this week's big changes to energy bills and more importantly, what that means for you. We're going to be talking about changes to how you might be charged for energy, as well as whether energy bills are going to stay higher for longer, and we'll also cover off the help available if you're struggling. I'm Sam Barker, a money reporter at the Mirror, and I'm joined by Graham Hiscott, Head of Business at the Mirror. Hello, Graham.
Hello. Hello, Sam.
So we're going to be talking you through some of the major energy changes going on that you need to know about, but we're also here to answer your questions. So if you have anything to ask or just want to have your opinion on the subject heard, please do feel free to post. We'll do our level best to answer both during the session and at the end in around 20 minutes time. So to get things started, we want to talk a little bit about some of the big movements with energy bills this week. So in a nutshell, it looks like these are about to go up and down more frequently for more than 80% of UK homes. And that's because the energy regulator, Ofgem, wants to change how often it reviews its price cap, which limits energy bills for homes using average amounts of power. Around 80% or more than that now of the country are currently on energy deals subject to this price cap. And in times gone by, Ofgem would change how much it limits the price cap by twice a year in April and October. As of this week, it now wants to do this in January and July too. Ofgem's position is that this will mean that any cuts to energy bills will be passed on quicker, but there are some fears that in the short term, it means that any rises to bills will be passed on quicker as well. So Graham, in the short term, what does this mean for sort of consumers and the direction of their energy bill, please?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, technically it's a consultation, so that's it. Theoretically, it might not happen, but let's face it, it almost definitely will do. So the big thing to think about from this announcement is that nothing is going to change between now and October under these plans. So as you say, Sam, that this price cap, which polices basically what if you're on a standard tariff or another sort of default tariff, as they call it, or if you're on a prepayment meter, and there are 23 million households who are affected in this way. So in the short term, we've had the big hit with the price increases last month. The price cap won't change now until October. So, and in October, as anyone listening into this will, I'm sure, would have heard about, there's going to be inevitably, it's going to be another big increase in that price cap come October. Bank of England thinks it's going to be 2,008, going up to about 2,800 as an average. That's about 40% increase. Others think it could be slightly less than that, but hey, it's going to be another big increase in October. So that's what's happening for bills between now and then. Then what's going to happen, as you say, is that they're going to look at changing that price cap every 3 months. So January the 1st, nice New Year Day present for you. It could be that those prices will change again. Now, the thing to remember is it could mean that the price cap goes up on January the 1st. It could be potentially it comes down. The sort of school of thought is at the moment that it might not actually change too much, but then the time after that is that April the 1st. That's the next time the price cap will change, and again it could go up, it could go down. It's pretty hard to know at the moment, and that's probably the big thing that maybe a lot of people listening to this will want to know. But what I can say is that the pressures, the wholesale costs, the things that are driving all these our bills ever higher, they're still very high. And when Ofgem is deciding how much bills will go up next January, a big chunk of that is already factored in by how much wholesale prices are now. So the pressure is definitely upwards. So you should be expecting bills to keep rising for the time being.
I mean, it's certainly not great news, and I think that there are, certainly we've had a few people contact us and they said, well, if we're going to move from a price cap which is changed twice a year to a price cap which is changed 4 times a year, and it's kind of a much more responsive kind of pricing, does that mean that in the winter, we might get clobbered with a sort of an abnormally high energy bill, and the cost of that otherwise might have been smoothed out throughout the year? So it's about kind of this question of what's the chance of that happening, and what are the chances that you might suddenly get hit by an enormous bill that you just, with your cash flow and your income, might really struggle to sort of pay for that period in January. Do we know? I mean, it sounds like there's almost no knowing But is that a realistic fear for people to have? Is it possible that we could get hit with these huge quarterly bills almost?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess one thing to keep in mind is that if there were going to be a big increase in January, it's not going to be another big increase in April. The idea is, as you say, it's about smoothing it out. So let's say, for sake of arguments, this is definitely not going to happen in terms of an actual figure. But let's say bills would have, under the 6 monthly review process, would have gone up by £300 next April. That increase would theoretically be smoothed out between the January increase and the April increase. So it's not you won't get hit double. It's really, I mean, interesting to know quite which way it's going to go, because the idea of this is so these suppliers will have to pass on the reductions in wholesale costs, and this will happen much sooner. But I'll tell you one thing: this is what the suppliers wanted, not necessarily what consumers wanted. The suppliers wanted quarterly reviews, and this is what Ofgem have listened to and are seemingly going ahead with. So that tells you something.
And it did seem, there were an awful lot of people when they announced this, which was earlier in the week. There were an awful lot of people who were sort of commenting, energy experts and the like, who said, well, this just, and charities as well. He said, like, this pretty much seems to serve energy companies' interests and not so much the interests of consumers. Most famously was Martin Lewis, who obviously founder of Money Saving Expert, and a sort of a huge figure kind of in the financial world. And I think he's actually apologised for how he spoke to Ofgem staff when he heard that, firstly, this point that we've been talking about the quarterly billing happened, but also the next point that we wanted to come onto with this call. But what I should also say is that thank you to everybody for tuning in. Now we're here as well as kind of letting you know some of the big updates in the energy bill world this week and what it means for you. We're also here to answer your questions on energy bills. So if you've got anything that you really want an answer to, or anything that we're saying today, please do feel free to post it in the comments. We'll do that, and we'll get around to answering it. But we also wanted to come on to talking about whether British people will be paying higher bills for longer as the result of another Ofgem change, which was announced this week. So what this is all about, in short, we're paying, as Graham says, part of the reason we're paying so much for our energy bills is basically the rising cost of gas, which British homes are very, very reliant on. So when gas prices fall, energy bills should drop. But when this happens, and this is really, kind of a big issue, when gas prices fall, Ofgem has a special rule that will kick in that could delay energy firms being able to cut the price of your bills. And this is basically how it works. And Graham, feel free to sort of chime in and correct me on this point. But my understanding of how this works is that if gas prices fall, and energy firm A at the moment, their best deal is probably going to be very similar to energy firm B, because most homes are on these kind of price capped deals. Suddenly, if energy firm A can bring out a cheaper deal than energy firm B, and A takes a customer from B, Ofgem rules mean that the kind of cheaper energy firm will have to pay a fee to energy firm B, and that fee would be 85% of the price difference. So obviously, what this means is that anybody who, if I'm an energy company and suddenly I think, oh, fantastic, I've got the ability to drop my prices, help consumers and kind of, grow my own kind of customer book into the bargain. But I can't do that because, I'm going to have to pay a whacking great big fee to everybody else. So, Graham, what, is that right? Why is this happening? And does it mean bad news for bill payers, please?
Yeah, and actually, do you know what? This is probably the more significant than actually the quarterly changes in a sense. This is very hugely controversial because as you explained it. But so essentially, it's if you're on a standard tariff, which most people, the vast majority of people are at the moment, and you're going to switch, you're probably going to switch to one of these to a fixed rate deal. Now, looking ahead to when things might improve, the chances are you're going to switch from a standard tariff to a cheaper fixed rate deal. Now, as you've explained, Sam, the disincentive there is for this other supplier. It says, okay, I'm going to bring out this new cheaper fixed rate deal. Hang on, if I do that, I'm going to have to pay the customer's old supplier a huge fee, which I have to factor into how much I'm going to be able to offer this new one for. And the argument, certainly, as you say, Martin Lewis has been sort of getting very irate, rightly, about this, is that it's going to kill off competition hugely. So, I mean, unless the wholesale prices start to plummet, there just isn't the margin. There isn't the flexibility for suppliers to begin to offer some really cheaper deals, unless wholesale prices begin to fall significantly. Now, Ofgem says this is all about both the quarterly changes and also this change is about ensuring that we don't have more suppliers going bust, because we had, well, quite frankly, I think it was a couple of dozen. I think it was about nearly 30 suppliers went bust. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. The main reason is wholesale costs going through the roof. Now, they want to prevent the same thing happening when wholesale prices start to fall in this way, that it would leave the old supplier with too many of the costs for the energy which they've bought. Sounds quite complicated, but basically what people need to know is that as it stands, charities, campaign groups, Martin Lewis are saying that that this won't allow there to be lots of cheap energy deals being launched in the future, effectively killing off competition, which cannot be good for consumers.
No, exactly. But and they're calling this, Ofgem, the regulator, they're calling this the market stabilisation charge, which I think sort of, it tells you really, it's kind of the veil lifts, doesn't it, really? Because what this is all about is protecting, energy companies from falling over. It's not about helping consumers who are currently struggling with very high costs of energy. And
I mean, the one thing I'd say is a sort of a caveat to it, and you're absolutely right. This is not about ensuring that prices fall for consumers through by being able to switch to these cheaper deals quickly. What they would say is that it prevents these wholesale collapses in companies, which is all costing us ultimately, because the bill, I think, as I say, these near 30 companies that went bust, we're all picking up the tab for that. It's 1.8 billion, and that doesn't actually include the biggest of the lot, which was Bulb Energy, which is a whole different bill in itself. We pay for that because the suppliers that remain are able to recoup the costs, that the ones that take on the customers of those ones that went bust. So Ofgem's argument would be, well, there's no point allowing all these companies to go bust, because then consumers would have even less competition. But it certainly hasn't been received well, and not least because, as you say, the market stabilisation charge was actually increased from when it first announced the charge. I think it was early this year, last month even, I think it was. So the argument is it's got even harder for suppliers to launch cheaper deals.
Yeah, what you say is a fair point, and I mind taking those kind of points in order. I think the average person on a price capped energy deal, I think the figure is £60 of their bill, of that price cap, is actually to pay for companies that have already gone pop. But I think for certainly for the way I look at it, for consumers' points of from a consumer's point of view, whatever happens, you're hammered, aren't you? Because if an energy company falls over, your bill goes up. And if the Ofgem keeps this market stabilisation charge, your bills will probably stay higher for longer.
Yes.
And on that point, I just wanted to dip into the comments. We're talking a little bit about energy bills today, and we've had a few comments along the lines of, what's going to happen next? Is gas going to go up in price? Is electric likely to go up in price this winter? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over just to Graham on this point, because he is by far the expert on this. But I think, in short, the answer is not to take words out of your mouth, Graham, but I think the answer is probably, but we're not 100% sure.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly it. But you've got, as I say, the Bank of England, who are nailing the colours to the mast on this and saying that they expect the October increase to be 40%. 40%. The average 2,800. Excuse me. And obviously, within that averages, there'll be people who are listening to this when we talked about the bills going up by 54% last month, there'll be lots of people on here who will say, well, mine went up by much more, like double that. Absolutely right. So there's been some people who've seen their bills go up even more. And if their bills do go up to 2,800 in October, that would mean that the average bill would have gone up by about £1,500 in the space of a year. I mean, there's cost of living is affecting us all in many ways. But energy is the single biggest increase that I think many people are experiencing, and it's having a seismic impact. But to answer the question, our bill is going to go up for next winter. Chances are, the odds are yes. How much they will be is up in the air at the moment. It depends on a lot of factors going in about wholesale costs, etc. But most people from the Bank of England through to Ofgem, the chief executive of Ofgem, are all saying yes, bills will go up next for the winter. It's just a question of how much, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and if you, thank you very much for sort of taking us through, Graham. And if you sort of dialed in quite recently, if you're interested in knowing, well, how much could my bill go up to, as we've just said, it's very difficult to know exactly, but some of the figures that are being mentioned are, for the average energy bill, some analysts have said, maybe as high as 3,000. Graham, I think you mentioned the figure was 2,800 from the Bank of England. So unfortunately, we are looking at, potentially quite a large increase, and so that's up from around £1,976, I believe, would currently be the price cap for most people in the country. A little bit of variation around that because of the way averages work and so on. But unfortunately, we are sadly we are probably facing a future where the energy bills are going to go up again in October. But also this is all very we've been speaking a lot about bad news on this call. We are going to be talking about some of the help available, and some of the latest thinking from the government on maybe other help schemes which could be launched to help people who are struggling with the cost of living crisis, which, as Graham rightly says, is very much dominated by soaring energy bills. Got a question here from Kevin Sampson. Why does the meter rental, i.e. standing charge, need to increase by at least 59%? Kevin, that's an extremely good question, and I'm going to have to hand over to Graham, because I'm not 100% sure myself.
Well, I think, this is a very good point, actually, because the standing charge, so what's actually gone up is that the price cap, actually, it's a combination of the standing charge, which is basically a set amount, and then the amount that the companies can charge for per unit rate for their energy. Now, the standing charge is supposed to take into certain costs that come with supplying us all. But the argument is, by having a standing charge, and as Kevin's mentioned, by going up by, as he said here, at least 59%, if that's his case, then it actually disincentivizes people to use less energy to a certain point, because effectively, if you've got a sort of fixed slab charge which doesn't change whether you use a lot of energy or a little, it basically disincentivizing people to use less. By using less, I ultimately that's by being more energy efficient. Certainly, a lot of our readers will be using less because they just can't afford it. But that's the argument. Is the argument for the standing charge is that it's supposed to encompass certain things that keep the whole system going, pay for meters, things like that. But there is the argument against the standing charge is that it disincentivizes us all to be more energy efficient in the long run.
I'm with you. Well, thanks, Graham, and Kevin. Thank you very much for the question, and I hope we've answered it there. It's worth saying that whatever Graham doesn't know about energy bills really isn't worth knowing. So I'd urge everybody that's been posting questions, please do continue. We'll do our absolute best to answer them. We're here to help, and the subject today is energy bills. So please feel free to fire away, and we'll answer as many as we can. On that note, so Kaylee Wallace, hello, thank you very much. How often will gas and electric go up? So absolutely, it's a fantastic question, and we are, let's absolutely hammer this point home. So at the moment, if you're on a house paying for your energy by direct debit on basically what's called a price capped energy deal, which is, if you're in any doubt, it probably statistically is you, because around 80+% of homes now are on these deals. Your energy, how much you pay, is limited by a price cap. That price cap is adjusted in April and October, but it kind of works over a year, if you see what I mean. So it's not like, when the price cap goes up, it went up in April by about £693, but you weren't going to be getting, you weren't going to get a huge increase, a £693 bill on that day, on April the 1st that you've got to pay. It's just reflective of how much you've got to pay over the course of a year. So currently, price capped energy deals go up twice a year, April and October. However, this is likely to change to 4 times a year. And so that would be January, April, let me get this right. Yeah, that's right. And basically they're going to move to 4 times a year rather than 2.
Yeah. All I'd say, I'd add to that, Sam, is that you're actually right. Is that some people may well have seen their direct debits change, not twice a year or whatever. They'll go, well, my direct debit went up in January, or in February or whatever, before April. And that's definitely the case, because suppliers have been looking at usage and then changing it accordingly. Now, I mean, direct debit is we could have a whole session on direct debits, because a lot of people get rightly very frustrated when they see their direct debit go up significantly, and they try to question their supplier about why. The point is, the supplier will argue that, as you say, they're trying to smooth the cost of the energy over the course of the year. But it can mean that your direct debit, they can put their direct debit theoretically up at any time. They have to justify it, and you can question it, and you can ensure that when they do put it up, it has to be affordable. And you should also make sure that if you're in credit, and you certainly this time of year going into summer, you begin to be more in credit than we were right at the end of the winter. You can question how much credit you've got. If you think you've got too much credit on your account, you can ask for that money back. It's your money, okay? So it's good to have a balance there, like you might do in your current account in the bank. But it's important not to have too much. Otherwise, that's sitting with the energy supplier when it could be sitting in your bank account.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and especially now, I think a lot. If you're able to earn, some interest on that money, if you're lucky enough, to be able to have that money and put it into savings and not need to spend anything on it. Inflation currently is really, really high, but savings rates are probably at the best they've been for several years. So it's still worth doing, and most importantly, that money is there for you to dip into rather than your energy company making profit off it. So I think what we'll do, because obviously we're sort of coming on a little bit for time on this call, what I'd like to do is just very, very quickly recap a couple of the points we've moved on to, we've kind of covered off already. Then we're going to move on to talking about some of the help that's available to help you with the cost of energy bills, and other help if you're struggling with your energy bills. So the two big things that we've spoken about so far on this call are a change in how often you are likely to get your energy bills. So moving, if you're on a price capped energy deal, from 2 changes in price potentially a year to 4, and that's likely, if it does happen, it's almost definitely that it will happen, and it will start happening from January onwards, as I understand it. And the second point is that, unfortunately, and I wish we had some better news, the current plans from Ofgem, the energy regulator, are that we're very likely to be paying higher energy bills for longer, because of some kind of competition rules that kick in when gas prices start to fall, that will disadvantage energy companies that want to start undercutting significantly other providers. So I just wanted to move on. So obviously that's all been a little bit sort of bad news. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the help available with energy bills. We've had some people commenting here. I think it's probably not fair to sort of mention them by name. We've obviously got some people who are struggling, with their energy bills, and I'm sure a lot of you are kind of well aware of some of this, but it's just worth mentioning some of the help that's available, and some of the government's plans on future help as well. So the two kind of main bits of help that the government has announced so far are to kind of help with energy bills and the cost of living. Number one, £150 rebate on your council tax. So this is already will have kind of come to you, or it will be coming by September, for people who are in council tax bands A to D. Now, the people who will get this first are the people who pay their council tax by direct debit. We get an awful lot of people emailing in every single day saying, either I don't pay my council tax by direct debit and I've not had this payment, or I've just not had it. So, as it's worth saying, so the government has said to people, to councils, you've got, the scheme starts in April, but you've got until September to process these payments. So it's a bit of a postcode lottery, unfortunately, in that some people will have already had the money and some people have to wait. If you don't pay your council tax by direct debit, then you also face a postcode lottery in terms of getting this money, because the councils, the reason that people with direct debits get it faster is because obviously the council knows your bank details, and it's an awful lot quicker for them to process that money. If you don't, then your council will either contact you, or in the case of some councils, so for example, Camden in London, you will have to contact them. So I would say it's probably worth, if you have heard nothing at all from your council, and for example, maybe you don't pay your council tax by direct debit, do get in contact with your council and ask them, what do I need to do? For example, if you do live in Camden, there are certain forms that you have to fill in, and the council will kind of process that and get that £150 sorted out. So that's probably the first point to mention: £150 paid through council tax as a rebate. The other big thing is from the government is £200 as off the cost of energy, and every household in the country will be getting this. Every bill payer in the country will be getting this. Unfortunately, it is a form of loan rather than a grant. So the government don't like it when we call it a loan, but that is effectively what it is, because you've got to pay it back. And the current kind of thinking is that you will pay it back through the form of higher energy bills over a 5-year period. So that's what we've got so far. The Mirror, any kind of charity you can think of, they've all been saying, we need more help on the cost of living crisis, specifically energy bills, specifically for the most vulnerable homes. And the government so far has done very little. There is a very small glimmer of hope, which is that, from what I can sort of gather from, sort of other journalists, discussions are going on in government about helping struggling households with further payments. We are uncertain what that means in terms of how much people are likely to get and how they're likely to get it. But those discussions are going on, and as soon as we know anything more, obviously you'll read about it. You can read about it in the Mirror. But while we're talking about help, Graham, I just sort of wanted to sort of turn to you and say, well, if they say, well, okay, Sam, that's brilliant. I've got the £150 rebate. This £200 from the government. That's all fine and dandy. But I still can't afford this bill, and I'm really, really struggling. Is there a way that people, if they were to contact their energy provider, is there some sort of, what happens then? Can they get help if they call their energy company directly?
Well, yeah. I mean, the first message is do that, because not only should your supplier listen to if you're having difficulties, it's also part of their license requirements. They are required to be understanding about this. And then if you end up getting into energy debt, which a lot of people are, and certainly even more will do, they can put you on repayment plans, which are supposed to be set at a level that you can afford. So, don't worry. It's at the moment, obviously, we've got good weather, but so you don't need to worry about not perhaps having heating on and being in hardship for that reason. But you should, talk to your supplier because A, they've got to be understanding about how their direct debits are set, the amounts are set, and B, as you alluded to, almost all of them have got schemes in place, pots of money which they put aside, which, if you ask, can give certain amounts to help you through these tough times. I mean, in the case of, just an example, in the case of British Gas, it has its own one for its own customers, but it also has a trust that it's involved with, which also provides grants, also provides payments for customers of other companies, as odd as that might sound. But it's a finite amount of money, but it's definitely worth contacting your supplier to ask what help is available. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed. Lots of people will be doing this, and quite rightly so. The worst thing possible would be to bury your head in the sand and not ask for help. The money's there. I'm not saying it's a huge amount of money. It won't make all the difference. It won't cover the increases, but you should have that conversation with your supplier. And Sam, you were talking about the amount of help that was on offer from the government and whether there will be anything announced. I would be amazed if there weren't something announced, certainly before October, which isn't any consolation for those that are seeing their bills go up right now. But I'd be amazed if there wasn't anything coming from the government at the moment. The big talk at the moment is this potential windfall tax on oil and gas producers. It's something that Labour and unions and in fact, we the Mirror have been calling for. The oil and gas companies have made colossal amounts of profit from these high wholesale costs. And the argument is a windfall tax, a one-off tax, a one-year tax, that money could be used to deliver helps directly to consumers to help with their energy bills in particular. Labour's plan amounts to about £600 per person, per household. So could make a real difference. I'd be amazed if we didn't hear something on that in the coming weeks, if not months. But I'd be amazed if we didn't hear something from the Chancellor before October. But you know what? The Labour leader Keir Starmer made this point in the Commons yesterday. We know they're going to do something. Make it happen now. You know, for every day that goes by, it's another day of hardship for people who are struggling with their energy bills.
Absolutely, and you know, so many people are, and you know, very sadly, you know, we do hear from people every day who are in that position. But yeah, obviously, you know, you've heard it here first. So you obviously watch this space. As soon as we can say anything definite about more government help on energy bills, obviously we will. But I think, you know, thank you very much everybody for tuning in and for all the questions and kind of comments that you've been providing. I really hope you found that helpful. Sadly, I think that's probably all we've got time for today. But we will be back every Thursday at 1 o'clock. We will host these Facebook Lives, and each time we will cover a different point about the cost of living crisis. So I really hope that you found it helpful. Thank you all so much for tuning in and watching and for engaging with us. I've been Sam Barker on the Mirror. This is Graham Hiscott, and we want to say thank you very much, and we'll see you all next time.